Hello, welcome to the James Cooley Show. I'm your host, Dr. James J.C. Cooley, and I'm excited today because this is a first. This is a first. I mean, I've been knowing this couple, and I'm serious. Probably about 35, 36 years. I'm dating myself a little bit. Uh, been trying to get them on together on the show for quite some time because they are doing some remarkable things out there, and I think that the world uh, need to understand that there's certain things that from a spiritual, from a mental, spiritual, emotional standpoint that we all need to understand, and we have to be able to work together. We have to be able to come together. We have to be able to live together, and we have to be able to love together. And I am so inspired by this couple. And I know Michelle's going to introduce it. If I call the name out, Michelle's going to beat me up because she goes, that's my job. You're doing my job. You're doing my job. But I want to welcome everybody aboard, wherever you're watching this at, whether you're watching on 360 television, Transfer TV, YouTube, LinkedIn, over 25 live streaming network, over 50 podcasts. Welcome to the show. And if you want to be part of the great conversation at any point during this conversation, all you have to do is just go to the comments on whichever platform you're watching us on. And all you have to do is just ask. And one of us, especially the Archibalds, I slipped up. I'm sorry. Any question that you might have. So, hey, how you doing, Dr. Cooley? How you doing today?
I'm doing good, James. How are you?
I am absolutely fantastic. This is Juneteenth. We cannot go without recognizing Juneteenth, and also to have two of my most dearest friends on earth to join us today. That means so much to me. That means truly, truly so much to me.
I remember the first time I met the husband was
Captain Archibald.
I'm supposed to say that. You know what? I'm leaving. No. The first time I met retired Captain Dr. Herman Archibald was in Hawaii when I had a business trip. And, you went with me, and then we took some time to meet him for lunch and everything like that. He seemed really just sweet and kind. And you've always talked about him. So, and then you also talked about Dr. Mary Archibald, and I met her the first time at the graduation ceremony recently. And this will give us more time to really get to know them a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm excited about the topics that we're going to talk about today. So before we get started, Michelle, why don't you introduce the title of the show, the purpose of the show, and introduce these two absolutely magnificent great people.
Yes, title of today's show is Spiritual First Aid and Self-Care in the Post-COVID Church, a Leader's Perspective. And we're getting to know the background of Dr. Herman Archibald and Dr. Mary Archibald. We're going to talk about, we're going to start the show talking about the celebration of Juneteenth, but we're going to dig in about the BLESS method, belonging, livelihood, emotional safety, and spiritual needs, and talk about mental wellness versus mental illness, the issue of stigmas, and the importance of self-care. So Dr. Herman Archibald, retired Captain, United States Navy, the Chief Officer for Giesler LLC, Captain retired Herman Archibald develops and executes all aspects of Giesler LLC's growth strategy, including business development, capture, proposal operations, strategic pricing, and customer engagement. Archibald has been approved to assume the role of Chief Operating Officer effective January 1st of this year. As such, he will be second in command at Giesler LLC and oversee all aspects of operations within the company, including marketing, financial growth, and sales. There's many things to know about this amazing man, but we only have an hour show. Now let's talk about Dr. Mary Archibald. Wow, Dr. Mary Archibald, PhD, HC and CAGCS, holds a PhD in psychology, Master of Science in professional counseling, and a Master of Arts, Human Services, Health and Wellness. She's a licensed mental health clinician in the state of Florida and owner of West Florida Counseling Services LLC, a faith-based private practice offering services in various theoretical orientations and specializations. Dr. Mary Archibald's published dissertation considers technology time spent, conflict style, and communication styles as predictors in relationship satisfaction. Like I said, there's many to tell about this amazing couple today, but we ain't got the time. But we're going to learn a little bit more about them and what. Please welcome to the show, Doctors Herman and Mary Archibald.
Wow. Wow. Hey, I can't believe this. I'm actually in the presence. Got both of you guys on. And just like I mentioned to you, it's an absolute thrill and a pleasure to have both of you guys on at the same time. So I want to start out, besides what Michelle just put in the bio, start off with you, Dr. Mary. Can you tell our viewers and our listeners a little bit about you, where you grew up, and how did you meet this great guy that's sitting beside you here?
Well, I am so happy to be here today, James, and thank you so much for James and Michelle, thank you for the invitation. And I'm a little country girl. I'm from Meridian, Mississippi. I graduated high school and joined the military, and that's when I met the love of my life. We were stationed together a couple of times, and we didn't meet each other, but we did see each other at 3 different locations. And then at the 4th location, it was a deal. We sealed the deal.
Wow. Arch, what is your version on that, man?
She made me an offer I couldn't refuse. No, it was absolutely amazing, and we've been friends for a long time. I was 2 when I met her, man. That's why she's still there's still the sweetness in my tea. She's a sweet, but wonderful person though. A great mother.
Thank you.
And she keeps me stable. We like to say I'm grace and she the law. So, and God really pushed people together. He didn't want 2 people all thinking the same way all the time. But she's just, I could not be where I'm at without this wonderful person here. This great person.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And, we're going to get off into all of these things in a minute. But, I want to talk about today is Juneteenth.
Yes.
And Juneteenth is, if anybody that understands the history of Juneteenth, when Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation in 1965, freeing Black folks from slavery, it was a couple of states said, "Hey, we're not going to tell them. We're going to keep this. We're going to keep this. We're not going to let them know." And my understanding, it took 2 years. It took 2 years, and it took an army general, a whole army, almost, to come to this state, Texas, Galveston, Texas, to let these people know that they are free and they're free to go. Captain Archibald, what are your thoughts on Juneteenth?
Hey, great question. In 1865, the Proclamation of Emancipation was signed January 1st. And the critical dates between, and James says it took to June 19, 1865. So the proclamation was signed in 1863 to 1865 to be over 2,000 soldiers and a general had to enforce that freedom for our people. And here's the crazy thing. From the time Lincoln signed that, the war was at an end. He had been re-elected president and assassinated before the people really got the word that they were free. So that was 2 years more worth of free labor When we say there was a lot of America is built on the labor of people that look and feel like us, is absolutely true. Because even in this case, it took 2 years for them to get the word that they were free. So it's a holiday worth celebrating.
Dr. Mary, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree with everything my husband said. He went through the historical facts, but here's my stance on that. I grew up in Mississippi, and there was not a celebration of Juneteenth. So I didn't grow up with the knowledge of knowing what the actual holiday was. It wasn't something that was taught in school. It wasn't in our communities. It wasn't in our churches. So we weren't even privileged with the celebration itself. So even in that mindset, just thinking back to what my parents didn't know, the things that their parents didn't know, it's a disservice to all Americans, period, who weren't privy or didn't have the knowledge to even participate in the celebration. So that's why I'm so excited now that, knowledge is power. And once we come to the knowledge of what's what, then we get to celebrate those things.
Yeah. And I spent my summers in Galveston, Texas. And so we were keenly aware in Galveston because the state of Texas in 1980 made it a state holiday. But it was nowhere, as my wife said, Juneteenth wasn't taught in our history books. Certainly wasn't taught in the state of Alabama history in school.
Or in Mississippi.
So the only reason I knew about it was because I would spend summers in Galveston. That's the only reason.
Wow. A lot of our young people, well, let's just kind of focus on just that. A lot of our young people, in your opinion, do they need to really understand the importance of Juneteenth and what their ancestors went through for us to get the freedoms that we have today? What are your thoughts about young people being cognizant of it and really truly understand the significance of Juneteenth? We'll start with you, Dr. Mary.
It's very important that our children become informed. The reason I say that is because when I went into the military after being raised in, and I understand that it's everybody's responsibility to come to the knowledge of truth. But when you didn't have that backing, when you didn't have that type of educational background, you were left to your own devices as far as learning. And I remember distinctly sitting in a room full of women when I was 19 years old, who had come from different walks of the world, who were all very highly educated, and they had some knowledge of Juneteenth. And I was sitting in the room and I felt like I was the only person in the room. And I said, this was 19 years old. I was the only person in the room that didn't know about Juneteenth. So I don't want that to be a recurring trend in my children or my children's children or their children. I think that I feel that everyone should be aware of what Juneteenth's origination is and what it means to us and how this looks moving forward.
Wow. And I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this one, but Dr. Mary, I think you just hit it. You hit the nail on the head. We need to have an understanding because we need to know where we came from in order for us to truly know where we're going and to truly pass the legacy down to our children, our children's, and to keep them aware of, hey, it's a lot of folks, a lot of people shed blood and tears to make sure that you all get an opportunity to enjoy the freedom. We're going to take a station break. We're going to come back and we're really going to dive off into the topic of today. We're going to talk about the spiritual first aid, self-care in post-COVID, and also how the church, and this is coming from I would say, a leader's perspective, but we got two great leaders here. So leader's perspective. If you want to be part of this conversation, just go to the comments. Ask any question you like. Yes, your life. We'll be back shortly after the break. Hello, welcome back to the James Cooley Show. It's your life, and just tickle pink. Just sitting back here, listening to the history lesson that the Archibalds just gave us, and as it relates to Juneteenth. And I want to wish everybody happy Juneteenth out there. Hope everybody celebrate today, or I hope you celebrated yesterday. We love you. So happy that President Biden signed this into law a couple of years ago, and we will continue to celebrate. I want to talk about the title of today's show. And I am so excited because Dr. Mary, we're going to pick on her first. I mean, I know she had a lot to do with this. Arch, I know you did as well. You know, the title. Michelle, tell them what the title of the show again is.
Well, the title of the show is Spiritual First Aid and a Self-Care in the Post-COVID Church, a Leader's Perspective. So, Dr. Mary, Dr. Herman, why did you choose the specific title to discuss today? And really, what does it mean?
Dr. Mary first.
Well, okay. 1, because we are leaders. 2, because we are pastors of a church. 3, because we know that mental health has been a taboo subject as well in the African American community. So we want to bring some knowledge and some insight to this specific topic.
What about you, Dr. Herman Archibald? Why did you want to discuss this today as well?
Ironically, this topic came to mind back when we was first establishing the church. God birthed the church in the middle of our COVID world. Mm-hmm. And my wife, we was at the table. I'll never forget this. She asked one of the most profound questions that I'd ever heard. She said, what will a post-COVID church look like once we get out of it? And we were, enjoying our team. We were sitting around having a cup of coffee and brainstorming, and nobody really came with a whole lot of good answers, because we really didn't know. You don't know what you don't know. And so as we began to get into the day-to-day business of doing ministry in people's lives, this became a natural fit, because this thesis allows us to go back and do a triage of the things we did well, the things we didn't do well, the things we knew and then what we didn't know. And so you can't learn until you get to a point where you can move forward from some of the things you didn't do well. And so when Dr. Mary recommended this topic, it was a home run, and so that's what we just want to have dialogue with the public on our perspective on it.
Well, how did post-COVID, how did it affect the church, relationships between family, friends, co-workers, etc.? How did it affect the church? And let's start with you, Dr. Mary. In your opinion, how did it affect the church?
The pandemic itself affected the church and families and relationships in a plethora of ways. First of all, this pandemic is something that we've never experienced. So this was brand new to everybody. It has left an indelible mark upon families, relationships, and the church as well, in that we have had to relearn or rethink of how we can interact or how we can integrate with each other. It has changed our thinking as far as how to remain safe, but continue to do business as per usual. Mm-hmm. There has been so many changes, so many different dynamics, so many things that we don't know, so many things, even still now, that we're trying to bring to public awareness, just as my husband has said, of things we did wrong and things that we can capitalize upon what we did right. But as far as the family is concerned, as we all know, my husband has lost several family members during this pandemic, and it definitely has placed some heaviness in relationships and in our families, in that we don't get to fellowship as much as we used to. There's still some of the fear associated with who can and who can't get COVID. Is this something that's still prevalent? So it has changed the trajectory of families. It has changed the way that we sit with each other. It's changed our social skills. We don't do dinners at the table anymore. It's now everything is per social media, or like we're doing now. We're not with you. So, technology has played a role, which is part of my thesis or my dissertation, that technology is changing everything. And COVID is one of the contributors of all that we're experiencing at this point.
Wow. Dr. Herman, even after people started, let's say, coming back to the church, how did you and Dr. Mary handle people's fears, and how did you, I would say, handle encouraging them to come back physically present in the church? And what has been the challenges in that?
Great question. And some of the challenges, primarily, that's been some spiritual challenges. One, to let people know that we are not against you getting vaccinated. Follow the advice of your physician, your heart, your prayer, your whatever God tell you. We don't teach against not being vaccinated. Also, we tell people that at some point, as you reintegrate yourself into the mall, the grocery stores, they getting your gas. At some point, you need to reintegrate yourself into the house of worship, because certainly we can worship remotely. We're not saying that. But what we are, I need you and you need me. And we need each other, so we can build and fan the flame that God has given us, so we can make each other strong and better. And economically, it impacted the church economically, because one of the first employees we had to bring on the church staff is someone to clean, because people needed to feel safe. So we had to make sure. So after every major event, somebody cleaned the church. To meet the CDC standards, we had to get gloves and masks and hand sanitizers and all those things to make people feel as safe as possible. And one of our outreaches, food giveaway. We have to make sure we have gloves and people slow the traffic coming down in the church. So we began to bring stuff out to the people to really serve the people that way. So it's been a learning experience. And like I said, we did a lot of stuff wrong, but we did a lot of stuff right. And our goal is to learn from the things we did wrong and perfect the things we did right.
Wow. You just touched on several things. And you touched a little bit on spiritual first aid, because it's so important. I mean, I know we all have a first aid kit stored in certain places to, in case accidentally abruptly occur. A spiritual first aid kit, Arch, what you was talking about is getting people back in church physically, getting people to understand that it's okay, getting people to get aware that, yes, our organization is going to clean, we're going to follow the CDC standards, getting people to, from a mental and a spiritual perspective, to change the mindset, because we all need God in our lives. How difficult of a challenge was that in sermons and being able to convey these things, where you have people that are mentally and spiritually ill, and not saying crazy, but like I saw all these things happening, and pastors just tell me that God is going to take care of me. Can you explain that a little bit?
I'm going to do a part of it, but I'm really going to pass that question off to my wife. But the best thing I could do as a pastor is be transparent with people and say, I don't know all the answers. I'm not trained in this area. You wouldn't trust me if you having mental difficulties and mental challenges. If you were having a physical broken bone, would you ask me to reset your leg? Probably not. You would go to a doctor for somebody to do it. So I didn't personally have the skill set to know to recognize all the symptoms and see everything that's going on, what people have. But I was blessed and fortunate enough to have my life partner, my wife, that has. So she's not only is she's trained spiritually, but she's a trained clinician. So she has the skill sets to be able to do it. And so I think you could answer that question better off on how the value added to having a trained clinician available for people.
Well, first, again, I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to just bring some awareness and to be transparent, because as leaders, we don't always know the answers. We don't always know. And with the pandemic being something that's brand new, we didn't have all the answers, and we still don't have all the answers as far as how we get people back into the church. So remember, this is a leader's perspective, and we're just giving some insight as to things we did right and things that we didn't do so well in. And one of those areas was that we wanted to bring people back into the house of God. And we have to first realize how important spirituality is. So as I discussed this earlier with my husband, the government shut down the church. The government shut down the church and told people to stay home. What they were saying then was spirituality is not important. But we know for well-being, for mental wellness, in a holistic perspective, spirituality is ultimately important. You cannot be resilient. You cannot have the abilities to live a life of wellness without considering spirituality. So we have those challenges of getting people back into the church. And the principle of spiritual first aid is to identify your own strengths. You have to know what you're good at and what you're not well at. And there may have been leaders or parishioners who themselves were going through deaths or incurring some type of anxiety or traumas associated with COVID-19 that weren't having their own needs met. So if your needs are not being met, and now you're inundated with your congregants for their needs to be met, it's just one big cluster of misunderstanding. And as per tradition, when we came to the church, the pastors were supposed to tell us what it was that we were supposed to do for life and wellness. Well, if the pastors didn't know, or if the pastors weren't aware of what direction to lead and to guide, there had to be a model developed. And this model is called spiritual first aid. This model is an integration of both psychology and theology, which is saying you have to have some cognitions to understand what your health status is. And then there has to be some spirituality, bringing in Christ to help also assist based on your faith. So this integration model is so simplistic in that it encompasses your core beliefs, the 5 core beliefs, which comes up with the BLESS principle as an acrostic. And in this BLESS acrostic, it talks about belonging. People have to feel that they belong. Do you want to take it up from there, sweetheart?
Well, I want you to hold that thought. I want to pick it up for belonging, because we need to go with the hierarchy, and belonging is the most important part of that. So we got to take a station break, but we're going to come back.
Okay.
And Arch, you're going to pick it up when we come
I
back.
will.
And we're going to come back and we're going to continue this conversation that we're having right now. And if you want to be part of any other conversation that we are going to have, all you have to do is go to whatever you're watching this on. Go to the comments. Ask these 2 absolutely magnificent, great doctors any question that you might have, and I promise we'll get you an answer. Is your life? We'll be back shortly after the break.
Really get a chance to know who.
Okay.
Really get a chance to know who you are. And once you know who you are, you truly know who you are, love who you are. Love who you are. You're a masterpiece. Love who you are. Love who you were born to be. Love me some me. That's what I'm talking about. When you leave high school, You gotta know today or tomorrow, hopefully today, what your plans are. Hopefully, there is no bad decision unless there is no plan. Create, collaborate, commit with confidence. Commit with what? Commit with what? In everything that you do.
Hello, welcome back to the James Cooley Show. It's your life, and I tell you, toward the end of that last segment, I did not want to take the station break because I did not want people to disrupt their thought process because Dr. Mary, she was in that group. She was on stage. She was delivering a message, a very, very powerful message that we're going to pick it up because it's so important. But before we go, I got to put a plug in. A Black Man Point of View, Mind, Body, and Soul went #1 bestseller, #1 release the first day, and I am still in shock. Currently, I think the ebook is still 99 cents. That's not going to be around too much longer. If you haven't read this book, if you haven't purchased the book, you might want to purchase this book, not just because I wrote it and we got 11 contributing co-authors, but it's a roadmap to what's in the mind, in the heart of a Black man, and some of the things and some of what led us to think the way that we do, and some of the things that we had to have struggled with to get over it, and so we can move forward, and so we can blossom, so that we can love, not hate, so we can love all of mankind, regardless of race, creed, or color. So that's the legit portion of that. I encourage everybody to go out there, and women especially, if you ever want to know why your husband, why your boyfriend, or the man that you are trying to catch, why he think the way he do, read the book. It's a roadmap. You know?
It's a roadmap for our daughters, understanding their fathers, understanding their brothers, understanding, Black men in general. Doesn't have to be, a spouse or anything in a romantic relationship. But this is hey, go out and purchase the book. But we want to get back to doctors.
I want to get back to Arch because
Yeah.
Dr. Mary, that last little sentence that you led was so powerful. Can you mention that again? And can you pass it over to Arch?
Yes, I think that where we were at the last point, as I was introducing what the spiritual first aid is, and it is a model of care that anyone can use. It's an integration of theology and psychology. So when we connect the models, we have to be able to cognitively think mental wellness. And as the World Health Organization famously says, there is no health without mental health. So there's an integration of psychology and theology, our spirituality, total being, body, soul, and spirit. It's the model that's integrated to help us to live holistic lives concerning our mental wellness.
Captain Archibald, you got to pick it up now. Come on.
Hey, I think we are a perfect example of where theology and psychology can live together. We've been married now for been together for over 40 years and been married for 39 years. So if we could just take a lot of love, a lot of forgiveness, and a lot of understanding, so they can coexist. But the B was belonging, and the L is livelihood, and really it talks about people having health needs, and they also having needs for resources. So we need to be a bridge to a wealthy place that can connect people. I know the wonderful things about bridges is bridges connect. From oftentimes the haves and the have-nots are connected through. So we need to be an avenue where we can connect people to whatever resources they need, be it financial, because a lot of people, we experienced it in our own lives that some families took a financial hit during COVID. So how can we get them to the resource? And we don't necessarily have to have all the answers, but we need to know how to point people to where they can get those answers to. The church, it's long gone, I think, are the days where the Lone Ranger and the superstar that knows everything. Teamwork makes the dream work. So livelihood is about connecting people with the financial and the health, be it emotional, physical, psychological help they may need.
Wow.
But before you shift on that, I think that we need to talk a little bit about belongingness. And anybody who has ever taken a psychology class would be familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And we know that in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the third tier is love and belongingness. But in this blessed model, belongingness is the first tier. Because what research is proving is that people have to know that they matter.
Yes.
People have to know that they have a voice and that people are genuinely concerned about what they need. So in this blessed model, and not to dismiss or anything that Maslow's hierarchy of needs has said, this theory was theorized in 1943. We're now in 2023. And just as times are changing, as conditions are changing, as situations are changing, we have to change our mindsets to meet the needs of people right where they are. So in Maslow's hierarchy of need, belongingness is number 3. We're saying that we're not satisfied until all of our physical needs are met and all of our safety needs are met. But what COVID taught us as parishioners, when people came to our doors, we used that same perception that others were using, that the first thing that we need to provide for these people is something to eat. We were inerrant in our philosophy. It was not food. It was not the basic needs. It was not that bottom tier of Maslow's hierarchy of needs that the people were actually needing. The people needed a presence. They needed someone to be there to listen to them, to identify what the need was. And that takes skill. That takes people who will first, and in this safety, in this first aid method, in order to implement the strategies, the person that's presenting it must first be humble.
Yeah.
We know what the scripture talks about humility. So we have to be humble enough to know if we don't know the answer, then we need to know where we can point people instead of giving them the same traditional things that we came up on that is now inerrant. We have to change as the trends of the times are changing. Not to say that God's word is changing, but we need to be equipped so that we can meet people at the needs of where they were. And for a perfect example, one of the things is people come to our church all the time and we think they need food, clothing, or shelter. But we're now discovering they just want a presence. They want a body. They want someone there to listen to them. And that has been the most astronomical tool that we have used as pastors to get people back into the church. Not trying to give them what we think they need, but giving people a presence to say, this is what I really need. And I was sharing with my husband, I said, you know, we had people come in who were homeless. And we thought, okay, let's give them clothes, let's give them food, but they didn't even want those things. What they wanted was a humble being to sit and to listen.
Yes, absolutely. That's what most people they want to be in others' presence. And one of the things before we take the break, I look at things like this and love Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But also one of the things that I came up with is in my writings and in my dissertation stuff is people want to sometimes just be heard. They might not always want you to say anything. But if you give them an opportunity to just get it off. So I call it, and Art, you done heard me speak about this. I call it 3 hats. People come to you, or if you're a leader, you have to be able to put the right hat on at the right time. Some people, and I call that umpire, chaplain, and the person that calling the strikes. Sometimes people just want a chaplain, is what I call it. They want to come talk to a chaplain and just tell the chaplain, oh, this. And the chaplain, they finished, they said, I'm done. Chaplain ain't said a word, right? But he listened. Sometimes people come and they are just off the rail. They screaming and they saying this and saying that, all these negative bad things or whatever that is. And sometimes you have to like, hey, do the coaching portion. Well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Have you looked at it like this? Sometimes when they just off the rail, they come, you have to sit back and say, you out. You're the umpire. And that's what leadership is. And that's what people, I believe, want in life. They want to be able to have, even in the spiritual realm, someone that they can talk to, someone that can guide them and teach them, and someone to call the balls and the strikes. I don't know if that made any sense to you, but God placed it on my mind. And I know Michelle saying that we way over the break. We're going to take a station break. We're going to come back and we're going to pick it up from there. If you want to be part of the conversation, just go to wherever the comments that you listen and watching this show. Ask any questions you like. It's your life. I'm Dr. James J.C. Cool. We'll be back shortly after the break.
Noah Dingley here, producer of The James Cooley Show, It's Your Life. And the new audio version of James' book, Country Boy, City Boy, A Journey That Ain't Over Yet, is a must-have. James shares his true life story of struggle and success in America. It's both a cautionary tale and a roadmap to achieving the American dream. Get the new audio version of Country Boy, City Boy, A Journey That Ain't Over Yet by James Cooley on Amazon.com or wherever audiobooks are sold.
Hello, welcome back to the James Cooley Show, It's Your Life. And I tell you that this is such an absolute fantastic show. Just getting the perspective from these two great doctors and pastors and many other hats that they are wearing. And I tell you, Dr. Mary, wow, all the things that you're talking about, the layout that you laid, Maslow, just things that we struggle with. I believe it's so important that we all have to touch on these things. We all have to be aware of them. But we also have to understand that mental illness is a problem. And what I mean by that, the pandemic and all of the things that we're stressing about race relationships and just wanting to belong in some type of organization or some type of fit in. I think that's so important to always discuss and lay it out. And I think you lay it out well. So Dr. Mary, what are some of the challenges and some of the resources out there for people that do not know what to turn to, that, all of these things are going through their minds and they want to do the right thing and they want to be on the right track and they want to help others out. But first of all, they got to get help for themselves. What would be your suggestion?
Well, I always open up by saying, when you don't know, just dial 988. And this will lead you to professionals on a 24-hour hotline that will help you get to the place where you need to be. If you don't know anything about mental illness or mental wellness, and someone comes to you and they're asking for help and you don't have the answers, know that you can refer them out to that simple number, 988. Secondly, this spiritual first aid model, this is a theoretical intervention that is wide known. It has been used over 15 years in major crises. So all we have to do is look it up. Those interventions are so simplistic that they were made for anyone at any walk of life to be able to implement it. And I am sure that there is someone in each of our churches or our organizations who have had someone, if not in their immediate family or in extended families, who have suffered from some type of mental illness or dual diagnoses, that they do know some type of community resources. I will link you to my webpage, or you can even go on my page and you can see. Well, of course, this is for my local community, but for anybody who is seeking mental health services, go to your local, go to the Chamber of Commerce. They have a plethora of organizations that you can reach out to get the mental health services that you require. And go into church. We as church leaders are now showing people the roadmap to follow, so that if you don't know the answers, we will refer you out to who it is that you can talk to.
Wow. Dr. Herman, so what is the responsibility of spiritual leaders as it pertains to their own mental wellness?
Yeah, first and foremost, we need to remove the stigma from mental health. Is like everything is, we grew up, it was time, this is a spiritual battle. And I get what they're saying, but there are some spiritual things goes on in people's lives, in pastors' lives, but there are also some clinical things that goes on, and they need to be able to deal with the clinical things. I'm often reminded how the great Apostle Paul laid hands on many people and they were healed, but yet Paul had Luke, who was a physician that was traveling with him to take care of his daily needs. So the psychological and the theological battle need not go on inside the lives of spiritual leaders. At the end of the day, if we need help, we can help our flock if we're unhealthy. So we must be healthy mentally, spiritually, and physically to be able to really truly be the value added that the congregants need. And they need value added, you know, but so we got to be healthy to be able to do that. I think a part of my time I was leading and grieving, trying to grieve my mother who had passed from COVID. And you're trying to meet the needs of the people. And when you get by yourself, you find yourself can't sleep, or you're crying yourself because you're dealing with sorrow and loss. I'm fortunate enough to have somebody that can see those signs in my life when you need balance. And she would say, hey, you need to just, you need to declutter, get away, get out and go do some things. Spend some time, you know, get away from that computer, get from upstairs and go down and get some sun. One of the things she said, get some vitamin D. And so, yes, we have to be mindful of their spiritual leaders for sure.
Wow. We're down to the last minute of the show real quickly. Dr. Mary, if people want to enlist your services, so you're doing so many great things out there, how can they get in touch with you?
They can go to my webpage. Will you be listing this as part of the show today? So they can contact me through the webpage.
And what is the webpage?
It's www.westfloridacs.com.
Wow. You know, I tell you, we need about 2-3 hours for this. Facebook, a webpage, etc. We're gonna make sure that we put it on all our social media platforms. I want to thank you and my DAWG, my Arch. I love you. I love both of you guys. You guys are welcome back on the show anytime, and looking forward to you guys launching your own show. I'd like to thank Dr. Michelle Cooley for putting together another absolutely fantastic show. Most importantly, I'd like to thank our viewers and our listeners for tuning into the James Cooley Show, It's Your Life Daily. Remember, always dream big, think big, and be big at everything you do. It's your life. We see you same time tomorrow, same time, same place.